Pécs is the fifth largest city of Hungary. It lies in the southwest corner of the country, close to the border of Croatia. The area has been inhabited for over 6,000 years, originally by the Celts, then the Romans, and by the 4th century, a significant Christian center. King Louis the Great founded Hungary's first university there in 1367. The city has been a rich cultural center since then, including the 150 years of Ottoman rule. Its name comes from medieval times. Cinque Basilicae, 5 cathedrals, comes from when building the city's churches they used stones from 5 old Catholic chapels. After the Battle of Mohács in 1526, where the Ottomans defeated King Louis II, Hungary was largely Turkish, with a small part in the Austria-Hungarian sphere. In 1543, it became fully Turkish, with churches converted into mosques and minarets all over the place. Only in 1686, an army led by Louis of Baden, general of the German Imperial Army, were the Turks finally kicked out. Prosperity finally came in 1710 and lasted without interruption until the fall of communism, when all of Hungary suffered in the transition and continues under the dictator Orbán. This is the city square, actually Széchenyi Square, with the inner city parish church. First a church, then a mosque, then a church again. We'll go and see it in a minute. It seemed to me the smart thing to do was to stay at a centrally located hotel, the Palatinus Hotel, so we parked the car in an underground lot right on the Széchenyi Square itself, taking the elevator right up to the lobby. It's an old and still trying to be elegant hotel. It's multi-storied and U-shaped and with a sort of grand entrance. You gotta admit, it gives you a warm feeling when you enter. You sort of expect a little Franz Lehár music in the background. Yes, the setup for breakfast. It combines European, semi-English/American food. Perhaps at one time a place for a thé dansant. Now this is the place for waltzes and charas. We went for a walk around Széchenyi Square. In the center is a Pestsäule, dedicated to the Holy Trinity, after the city was saved from the plague in 1710 to around 1714. At the bottom right is the equestrian statue of János Hunyadi, King of Hungary and Poland, who defeated the first Turkish invasion during his reign of 1445 to 52. On the left side of the screen is the County Hall, and just off the square to the right is the City Hall. This is the County Hall, built in 1897. It's much more decorated than the other buildings on the square. Its art pottery decors were made in the nearby Zolan factory. On the south side, just off the square, is the City Hall, built in 1710 and converted to its present Baroque style in 1907. The eye is attracted to the building at the north end of the Széchenyi Square. It's the inner city parish church. What's with it? It's weird looking. Look closely. A cross above a crescent. It was once a Gazi Kazim Yami, a type of mosque, now a Catholic church dedicated to the Blessed Virgin Mary. The first thing the Turks did in their occupation of Pécs was to demolish the 13th century church of St. Bartholomew and build a mosque, the circle below the dome. All other bits and pieces were added as it once more became a church. As you enter the church, immediately to your right is the moved and misoriented mihrab. It's not facing true east, yet it provides a place for the holy water font. Looking back from the old high altar is the crucifix above the mihrab and the holy water font. This is looking from the front door at the old high altar. And above the altar, a painting of the Holy Mother holding the infant Jesus. Passing through the Islamic curved arches, you come to the new high altar, directly opposite the old one. This is the great fresco of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and opposite is the Holy Mother, to whom this mosque church is dedicated, together with the images of the Pécs four-steepled templon. Before leaving the mosque church, look up. There is the gloriously painted mosque dome. In keeping with its history, Around the angelic figures are Christian symbols done in an Islamic style. It's only a short 22 miles from Pecs to this small yet historically important town of Szigetvar. The town's fortress was the setting for the siege and Battle of Szigetvar in 1566. There was already a fortress back in the Celtic and Roman times. Today's castle was built on an artificial island created by filling in the swampy area and driving the stream into a canal in the 15th century. This is a better view of the fortress. Notice the 4 demi-lunes at each corner, a design that helped the small Croatian-Hungarian defenders hold off a much larger Ottoman force. It was this fortress that blocked the advance of Suleiman the Magnificent's march towards Wien. There was a moat in front of these high walls, and behind them 18 feet of earth berms. On the 5th of August, 1566, Suleiman the Magnificent, now 72 and gout-ridden, arrived at Szigetvar with 150,000 troops and cannon. Opposing him was the Croatian captain Count Miklos Zrinski, with a mere 2,300 Croatian and Hungarian soldiers. Despite being grossly outnumbered, no reinforcements were sent from Wien. They held off the Turks for a month till the 7th of September, when the final battle took place. Soon the castle was set ablaze. Zrinski prepared for his last charge, addressing his troops. "Let us go out from this burning place into the open and stand up to our enemies. Who dies will be with God. Who dies not, his name will be honored. I will go first. What I do, you do. And God is my witness. I will never leave you, my brothers and knights." As the Turks were pressing forward along a narrow bridge leading to the main gate, the defenders flung open the gate, fired a large mortar loaded with broken iron, killing 600 attackers at once. Zrinski immediately led the charge of his remaining 600 troops. Unbeknownst to him, Suleiman the Magnificent had died the night before on the 6th of September. Zrinski was shot twice in the chest and finally fell by an arrow to the head. But he had his final revenge, a booby-trapped castle, a slow-burning fuse to the 3,000 pounds of black powder in the magazine under the castle. At the explosion, 3,000 Turks were eliminated. Count Zrinski, both he and his horse, defiant. He is remembered by both Croats and Hungarians in poems and opera. A little ways outside the town is a formal memorial park to the participants of the battle for Szigetvar. The heads of Count Zrinski and Suleiman honors both the victor and the vanquished. Yet by his death, Zrinski and those of his followers prevented the Turks' march on Wien. As the winter soon set in, the Városház, Town Hall. The statue of the lion represents both the courage and defiance of the people of Szigetvar. The parish church was once a mosque, the steeples once minarets. The famous modern Hungarian architect Imre Markovic designed Szigetvar's Cultural Hall in 1985. The two towers, for me, are the twin religions, a combination of a minaret and a steeple. Now, with many Turks in Hungary, and especially in this area, the town has its own Turkish consul. We spent a delightful day in Szigetvar, but now it's time to return to Pecs to finish our visit there. It's about a 10-minute walk from the hotel to Pecs Cathedralis. On the way, I stopped to visit the early Catholic necropolis. This is one of the burial chambers that you can see at the street level. This is the layout of the uncovered section of the necropolis. It extends well under the square in front of the Cathedralis. The necropolis goes back to the 2nd century Roman town of Sopiane, which was what Pecs was called. Paying a small fee, you can go underground to see the burial place of the wealthy. It's amazing that these Christian frescoes have lasted so long. Here's the ceiling of the same burial chamber. Lastly, on the walls, the Garden of Eden, with Adam, Eve, the tree of knowledge, and even the snake. This is a worthwhile stop before entering the relatively modern cathedralis, dome, or cathedral. Looking to the north from the necropolis is the Dome Square, with the cathedralis of Saints Peter and Paul dominating it with its 4 towers. As you approach the dome, there is the statue of the Pecs Bishop St. Maurus. The present-day dome, which has had many alterations and restorations, is only from 1882 to 1891, though the last restoration was only in 1962 and also in 1968. It is one of Hungary's largest and most beautiful cathedrales. Not even the Turks or communists could take away from the awful dome. The frescoes on the side of the nave show important scenes from the New Testament. You can see the 12 steps up from the nave to the high altar with its baldachin. The raised section is due to the oldest part of the dome underneath, the crypt. We'll visit that later. The scenes on the walls of the sanctuary are from the Old Testament, while the ceiling in the center are 13 panels with frescoes of St. John the Baptist and the 12 apostles. The outer panels are pictures of 54 other saints. Behind the high altar is the rear wall with a fresco of Christ with his mother on his right, and either side Saints Peter and Paul. The third figure is that of Bishop St. Maurus. Looking back from behind the high altar, you get an idea of the size of the dome. It's 70 meters long, 28 meters wide, and the towers are 60 meters. And the roof above the nave is 22 meters. It's really breathtaking. The organ, which has been extended and developed over the decades, was built by the famous Pecs organ factory, the Angsta. The Blessed Sacrament Chapel with the tabernacle for the Blessed Sacrament. A close-up of the rear dust. Christ in the center is the Lamb of God, Mary on the right, John the Baptist on the left, and on either side, Saints Peter and Paul. Then it's your guess as good as mine. Underneath are various Benedictine bishop saints, 2 women, and a lonely monk. This is the chapel of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, with a rear dust of the Nativity. In the close-up, the choirs of angels singing to the shepherds on the right, and the Magi bringing gifts on the left. The chapel of Pecs Bishop St. Maur, in English, Maurus. He'd been a Benedictine monk at Pannonhalma and eventually its abbot. He became Bishop of Pecs in 1036. Look closely on the left wall. There is a fresco of King St. Istvan, Stephen, at his coronation. The Lady Chapel is also the dome's treasury, with its precious vestments and chalices. One of the nave's beautiful frescoes. I came, I saw, I believe. Underneath the high altar and sanctuary is this gorgeous crypt with 5 rows of columns. As you get closer to the altar, so the fine details of the decorations begin to leap out at you. Though the details at first glance seem to clash, when looked at as a whole, there is a blended balance. We go now to a little video of mine of the Great Dome. This is the North Apse. Try as I might, my video camera cannot compete with a professionally lit scene. The high altar with its baldachin, raised up as it is due to the crypt below, is still impressive. A little more history about the church's major restoration between 1882 and 91. In spite of a strong local protest, the Romanesque church was knocked down, its Baroque altars, pews, and lecterns stripped and sold. What we have now is a neo-Romanesque church. Just a quick glimpse at the rear dust with Christ, the Blessed Virgin Mary, and Peter. Here's a more detailed look at the ceiling with two unidentifiable apostles in the middle, surrounded by a bunch of the other 54 saints. As I pointed out earlier, the nave contains scenes from the New Testament. Starting from the right, the first panel is St. Paul blinded on the road to Damascus, the second receiving his sight, and the third by being lowered down over the walls in a basket. Now back to the hotel. Maria and I just walked out of Hotel Palatinus. You can see only her back. She walks on the pedestrian-only Virale Utka, or Carroll Street, toward Széchenyi Square. I'm off in the other direction to see what I can find. I strolled in the other direction and came upon the Pecs Art Center and paused to sit down and admire it. It's been a great experience to see the mixture of both Catholic and Islamic periods in Hungary. I must move on now. Other university city due east, Szigetvar, with a brief intermediate stop at historical Mohács on the Danube.